Gary DePaul with Unlabeled Leadership. Welcome to episode 42. Matt Crump inspires you to flip. Here's a shout out for international listeners in the Netherlands and in Georgia. With that, let's get started. Matt Crump is not your typical professional. In fact, I would say he is currently living a full life. In his past, he served in the U.S. Army, and Matt, thank you for your service. He's owned a record store and served as a Christian pastor. He's an author, a founder of a couple of companies, and a podcast host. I would describe Matt as a personal and business coach and consultant, and he helps executives, entrepreneurs, and individuals align their beliefs with their actions. I'd like to encourage you to go to the show notes. There's a link to a video that Matt did called I Choose Life, Not Cancer. I found it, for me, to be inspirational and definitely worth viewing. Part 1, The Influence That Led Matt to a Mountaintop. A lot of people think of influence as something that you intentionally do, where you're actively trying to affect the people around you. But sometimes influencing is something that happens not because of what you say or intend to do, but just by the behaviors you model. The story you're about to hear falls in the second category, where someone influenced Matt to radically change without intending to try to change him. While the story led to a big change in Matt's life, I think there's some implications in how we model our own behaviors just in our everyday lives. And I think what Matt has to share can inspire you in how you lead. Here's Matt with the story.
About 1989 or so, one of the most impactful moments of my life was when I was really wrestling between who I was supposed to be as a man and who I'd been as a kid. I had joined the military. I was in the United States Army. By the time I was in the Army, I was already a drug addict and alcoholic. Things just got worse as I entered the military. Things got easier to access. I remember one time, about maybe within a year of being at my first duty station, I got stuck on guard duty with one guy, just me and him. And I was the party animal, the crazy guy, the guy with the big apartment pad, the hot tub jacuzzi, all that kind of stuff. And he was the Christian. So it's just me and him stuck out in the middle of a desert. The thing about that is he used to be a drug addict and a dealer and all kinds of things in his past before he gave his life to Christ. And he knew who I was and what I did. So we just had some general conversations while we were out there in the desert for those 7 days alone. He was able to explain and express some things to me that I hadn't heard before. I didn't grow up specifically religious or church goer or anything of that nature. I knew who God was and church and things of that nature, but didn't really have any commitment to that. He helped explain some things to me that really made an impact. Now, I didn't make a decision in that period of time we were together. It happened just a little bit after that. We went to a mission, and one night it was late. I'm really the kind of guy that likes to have friends. I'm a likable guy. I think I'm a likable guy for the most part. And when you don't like me, it bothers me. That's been a problem I've had for a long time. It's an acceptance issue. And those are some things that I've been working through in my life. But back then it was really tough. I thought, why doesn't he like me? Everybody else likes me. Why doesn't he like me? Finally, he told me, he says, look, I just can't live the kind of life and do the kind of things you do and be your friend. There's things I'm just not going to be able to do with you. And you're not going to like what I do. So I just don't want to get that close. And that bothered me as well. Finally, I realized there was a decision I needed to make. The things I was feeling empty and all the stuff with the drugs, the alcohol, women running around doing crazy stuff. One night, I wrote him a note, told him I was ready to make a decision. I was tired of living the life that I was. I really didn't know what the heck I was doing, didn't know what we were going to do, but whatever it was, I'm ready to do it. And we took a little bit of a walk, went to the top of a mountain. And I don't know if you've ever been in a desert at nighttime, but when you're out in the middle of the desert where there's no light pollution from cities anywhere nearby, there's about 1 billion stars in the sky.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. That night happened to have been a full moon as well. So we walked to the top of this mountain, and I literally stood at the mountaintop with a full beam of moonlight shining down on the two of us. I'm the guy that had that mountaintop experience where I was able to pray with him, join hands with me, led me in a prayer. And that's when I committed my life to God, gave my life to Jesus that day, and he changed everything. I came down the hill. I was no longer a drug addict, alcoholic, and doing all those kinds of things. My whole life changed, and it's been over 30 years and haven't looked back. It was that moment in my life that made a massive impact. Someone took time to explain some things to me, someone that had been in my shoes and someone who was on the opposite side of what that looked like. It was an amazing moment in my life, and I'll never forget it.
So he was able to model for you that you can change, you can be something different than someone who takes drugs and is involved in alcohol. It sounded like he wasn't trying to sell you on anything, but just his sharing his stories and his experiences had a powerful influence and effect on you and gave you some hope.
It sure did. I was able to join him in his stories. I was able to experience what he was sharing with me. It felt real. When you have an opportunity to share stories with people from a personal, powerful, and authentic way, it's amazing what can people say, I don't have a story. There's nothing important about my life. I disagree. Everyone has a story. Everybody has something that's important. It's just a matter of understanding how and when to share it. And I'm really grateful that he did that day.
I would even go further and say, not only does everyone have a story, but most of the time, we don't know when we are influencing other people with our stories and may have no memory of it, but we could radically change someone's perspective just by sharing 5 minutes of something that may have happened to us.
Yeah, absolutely. It can, a moment in time can be a lifetime worth of amazing opportunities.
Part 2, when someone believes in you, your perspective changes. When we're passionate about something, about an idea, about trying something new, the people around us can strengthen that passion or they can diminish it. In previous episodes, I've talked about believe in others, one of the 7 leadership principles that I write about in my leadership book, 9 Practices of 21st Century Leadership. And in my other book, What the Heck is Leadership and Why Should I Care? When I write about the principle, I talk from the perspective of why you should let this become one of your guides in life. But what I don't talk about is what it's like to be affected by someone who believes in you. In this story, Matt shares what it's like to be believed in by someone else, a complete stranger, who later becomes a great friend. Here's Matt.
Several years later, as I was, really wrestling through some things in life, I had been diagnosed with cancer. I've been fighting cancer since 2011. 2015, I was diagnosed stage 4 in cancer. I had melanoma cancer that metastasized. Went to my adrenal gland first, a couple other spots at my kidney muscle wall area of my leg, then traveled to my lung. Eventually, I had a bleeding brain tumor, had to be medevaced, and had emergency operation on my brain. In the period of time when I was diagnosed stage 4 and the space between that and my brain surgery, I was running a music store here in town where I was an MI dealer, musical instruments, and I did lessons. So we did all the lessons and instruments for a lot of kids here in town and adults, of course, as well. And I had that business, plus I was full-time pastor. So I was doing 2 full-time jobs, all kinds of things going 100 miles an hour. Then the cancer hits, and I finally decided I had to lay it all down. I shut down the music store. I had the brain surgery, took some time to rest and recoup from that. It wasn't much longer after that. I realized that I needed to resign as a pastor, which was one of the hardest decisions I've had to make. The music store was like my baby. The pastor job, that's my calling, and I had to lay it down. After that happened, I was really unaware of who I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to do. I had accomplished many, many great things in my life. I'm very grateful for a lot of the experiences I've had, but it left me to the point of wondering, now what do I do? I don't know where I'm supposed to go next. I had a few things laid out on the table for myself of what I thought I could do. Without going to that long list, there's about 5 different things, but one of them was I had always wanted to write a book. And I felt that this was a great time because I had started a movement called #God'sGotThis and had thousands of people following my story with cancer. And I was able to share stories of hope and of healing and freedom. I was able to share stories of legacy with some of my friends that unfortunately passed away from cancer and other terminal diseases. It was an amazing time in my life. I wanted to write this book. I had put out at a few websites that I was interested in some information. And one day out of clear blue sky, I was waiting for my children at school in line up, and I got a phone call. It's from a publishing company. The lady said, "Hey, we got your information. We'd like to talk to you a little bit about an idea for a book." I talked to her for about 5 or 10 minutes, and she said, "We need to stop talking now." And I thought, "Oh man, I'm in trouble. I did something wrong." And she says, No. She says, I need to stop you because your story is so incredible. And there's so many things that have gone on in your life, especially with this God's Got This movement that you've been able to work on. And that's, of course, what I wanted to name the book. She said, "I need you to talk to somebody else." I said, "Okay, who's that?" She said, "Well, just somebody who's an expert." I said, "Okay, great." I thought that would be, a week from now. I didn't know when. Oh, the phone rang again, pretty much about 10 minutes after I hung up with her. And it ended up being a gentleman who has written and published over 2 million New York Times bestsellers. He ghostwrites for many, many famous authors here in the United States and abroad. And he talked to me about helping me with the book. I didn't want a ghostwriter. I just needed somebody to help me write my first book. I didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
And he said, yeah. So he said he really believed in me. He was so behind everything that I wanted to do that he ended up becoming a personal mentor to me. If anybody's familiar with the Bible, there's a man in the Bible in the New Testament named Paul. He's one of the most popular of the New Testament, wrote most of it. He had a kind of a son named Timothy, who was a young pastor. Paul was like the father figure to Timothy. And Paul taught him everything he needed to know, start a church and run the movements and do the things he had to do. Well, this man ended up being a Paul in my life. At that time, I needed somebody desperately. He ended up helping with a lot more than just a book. It took about a 1-year process for me to finish everything out that I had in my heart and mind to share within this book. That relationship, it changed the trajectory of my life. It launched me into a whole new different direction, put me in places, one, I didn't want to go because I didn't feel like I should go back, and places that I wanted to go. If it weren't for the man who heard a story, who had his own stories as well, he was moved by mine, and he was willing to give of himself for me. It changed not only my life, but I don't know how many countless amount of people have been able to read or connect with me as a result. It's been amazing. It's one of those moments when in leadership, in growth, that we have to realize how important it is to always listen with 2 ears, right? We've got 2 ears. So one is always to listen to the voice of the person that's speaking to you. What are they saying? What are they really saying? And the other ear is a voice that's kind of listening to the things that you know. For me, it comes from listening to the voice of God, or coming from past experiences that I've learned through school or college, or different mentors, different leaders, or things you've learned your whole life, right? So you have those two places. One ear listening to the person, trying to listen deeply to what they're saying, and the other ear that's focused on the things that you've known and heard from other places, and merge those two together. And when you do, you may find a different result than if you were just trying to do a sales call or a marketing call or signing somebody up for another book deal or doing something different. Things might change. There may be some great benefits for both parties. And I try my best to wear 2 ears when I'm in a conversation. I don't always get it right, but I've learned how to do that from a few people in my past. And a friend that helped me do that book was one of the most amazing experiences that I've had yet in my adult life, in my life as an author, now an international best-selling author and a coach and a consultant.
Your friend said something early on that impressed me, is that he believed in you. That's a fundamental part of leadership, is believing in other people. And when you believe in other people that they can do more and they're capable of doing more, it changes the reality and opens up new possibilities. And it sounds like that's something that happened with you.
It surely did, Gary. And I'll tell you that when you just mentioned that, when somebody like that, especially because he comes to me as when I didn't know him at all, right? I didn't know him at all, but I knew what his credentials were. He was very well planted in a world where I wasn't even a seedling yet,
Yeah.
To have somebody like that tell me that he believed in me, what that did for me was changed everything. Somebody actually believed in me. It doesn't mean that I didn't believe in myself. Doesn't mean other people didn't believe certain, but there's a certain thing. There's this one thing that I was after, looking for my next step in life. Where was I going to go? How was I going to do it? How am I going to achieve certain things? There's going to be a lot of people that probably think I'm crazy, right? There's going to be other people that think I should go for it. To have a voice, a stamp of approval in my heart that somebody said, I believe in you, it makes all the difference. So as leaders, when we do that for people, we can't just throw words around. I mean, we have so many words in our culture today that get used and abused on a daily purpose. Authenticity is abused all the time. People say things, let's just be our authentic selves. True, let's be just whatever true for you, be your true self, right? All these words get abused for what they originally were meant for. But when somebody says something to you, you have to understand how much power is there. There's another scripture, again, don't mean to be a big Bible study today, but there is another scripture that says the power of life and death is in the tongue. If you are speaking to someone that you're going to tell them that you believe in them, you better believe in them.
Part 3, if you flip, you become more than a role. Too many people think of themselves from the perspective of a role. They identify with the role as who they are. It's when you think of yourself not as a role, but beyond that role, and the role is just something you do, the extraordinary can happen. Matt shares some advice in this area and how you can do this, and he calls it flipping or flip. Oh, and one small technical note. When you listen to this, halfway through, something unusual happens to the audio. It happened in Zoom. It wasn't an editing thing. It was just a weird occurrence. So please be patient with it. Here's Matt to share his advice.
We're all born with something special, and we're born with a greater call than just to be. We're amply supplied with stories, vision, and a request for achievement to enrich the world. So by willingly and openly submitting to a process and a method of some simple tools, a hope that was lost can be found, and the torch of faith will set your purpose on fire. I call this infectious drive of that hope revealed declares life to be lived, your call answered, and releases the creation of a superhero to engage the world. Now, I've found in my life that if I find clarity in 4 foundational areas from everything I've learned, from a troubled childhood to drug addiction, suicide attempts, to becoming a pastor, to being an entrepreneur and a business owner, having several businesses, and some that have succeeded and some that have failed, and from being an author, a coach, a singer, a songwriter, all these things I've done in life, I found primarily 4 areas. And those 4 areas that I think are foundational for any person to be able to be successful and move forward in life is what I call the flip. It's when you do the flip on life, you flip the script on your life. It's time to do that for a lot of us these days. Sometimes you have to make a flip once in a while in the midst of your flip. So the flip is this. It stands for faith, legacy, identity, and purpose. So that is a place of life empowering individual to overcome life obstacles, really to achieve their number one goal, to align their beliefs with action and live in a life of abundance. Faith. Do you have any? Do you believe in something bigger than yourself? Is the foundation you're standing on solid? Where is your faith? Who is your faith? And what do you place your faith in? Right? So do you have faith? Second one is legacy. Do you even know what it means? Do you have a legacy? If you, God forbid, were to drop off the face of this planet today, would your children, your wife, your husband, would your employees and staff, would they understand how to go right into what you're doing and continue driving that ship forward to be able to grow the legacy that you've left on this planet? Or would it be a complete mess? What is legacy to you? What does it mean to you? Are you going to leave something greater than yourself when you leave for other people?
You just explained legacy in a completely different way than the traditional way that I was taught about legacy. The traditional way is you move on, and the legacy is sort of like the memory and the influence that you've had. I love the way you describe legacy as a continuation of what you were doing. And that's the legacy. It's not leaving a statue. It's not leaving a monument or figurative one or a literal one. It's enabling other people to continue what you were set out to accomplish.
Absolutely. I mean, would you like to have a piece of rock at your house to remember somebody by? Would you rather have something that's making a difference in the world day by day, and it continues to grow? Right? I mean, those types of things are so important, so valuable.
Definitely.
And that really is something that people can grow with. That's something where somebody doesn't just have to take dad's business and mom and dad's because they expect me to take over this business. It's somebody who gets to. There's just a difference between have to and get to. So when you're living a life of legacy, you don't have to die to have legacy. You want a living legacy. So when you do die, it's just a continuation. You want a living legacy, you create places and spaces that people want to be in. So that's faith and legacy. The third one is identity. I've been a singer and a songwriter, a musician. I'm a graphic designer, a marketing guy, a branding guy. I'm an author. I'm a coach. I'm a consultant. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I am first and foremost a follower of Jesus Christ, right? All these things, minus the last one I just mentioned, all that stuff, like my guitars, and I do car restoration, and I'm a luthier. I do guitar work and violins and cello work as well, and do all kinds of woodwork like that. So a lot of people would think that my identity is I'm a luthier, or maybe I'm a singer, or maybe I'm an author, right? Those are just titles. That has nothing to do with identity. For me, identity is everything in whose I am. For me, my identity, you can take away my cars, my guitars, my stuff, all my toys, everything I've got that I love, which will really suck, by the way. However, my identity doesn't get destroyed and taken away because my identity isn't wrapped up in any of those things. My identity is in whose I am. And because I'm a follower of Christ, because I believe God's word, there are certain things that he says about me and certain things that he says that I am and to be. That's my identity. That's where I live into. The other stuff is just stuff. Maybe you're not a Christian. Maybe you're not a religious person and don't follow any type of organized religion whatsoever. Then who or what has ever spoken into your life and directed you in such a way that this is right back almost towards legacy, that leads you to a place of saying, no matter what happens, I always have that. I can always go back to that. People that you've seen the movies of somebody who was super successful, or they did all kinds of stuff in the world and things fell apart. And what did they went back home. They went back to the place that they originally loved. They went back, you can see all the Hallmark movies you can imagine in your mind right now going on, right? So there's all those places where identity is so much different than what a lot of people get sucked up to, especially in today with social media, that identity becomes all the things that you get to portray and do. And that has nothing to do with who you are. So identity is very, very important. Faith, legacy, identity. The last one is P in the flip when you're flipping the script on life. Purpose. What are you called to do? There's a big difference between a job and a calling. What are you made for? What is every fiber of your being, every cell in your body screaming to do? What is the one thing you can't stop thinking about? What is the place where you look at people and you think, oh my God, if I could only do this for them, if I could only share that with them, that place of purpose? When you understand faith, legacy, and identity, you're able to understand clearly what that purpose is, and then you actually get to do something. Put it in action. You get to do it. And that's when you flip the script on life.
A purpose is not a job description and a set of tasks that you follow. Not at all. No. I know so many people who get wrapped up in their roles. They think their identity, they think their role, their purpose is the role that they assume, and it's so hollow and short-lived. I agree with you. I think you need to develop your identity, your purpose, and apply that to your role or your different roles, whether you're a parent, whether you're a manager, whether you're a programmer, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Doesn't matter at all. It just matters that you're confident with who you are and what you're supposed to do. And there's no difference in any person's title or position in the world internally, because when you're living your true calling, your true purpose, there's not a dollar bill amount that's attached to that. There's some people that are called to be bazillionaires, right? There's some people that do well in that. Some people that do great with companies and all kinds. There's some people that are called to be a janitor. I mean, if you can think back to your school, how about this one, Gary? Do you know the name of Michael Jordan's high school basketball coach?
No idea.
Yeah. Yet he was one of the most influential men in modern sports history. I bet you Michael Jordan does. Just because we don't know Michael Jordan's high school basketball coach doesn't mean that man wasn't a stellar human being who made a major difference in the world, even if you don't know his name.
I think that's so true with leadership and with people who lead. You could be the person in the background that changes and influences others to achieve the extraordinary.
And it doesn't have to have all kinds of accolades attached to it.
Thank you, Matt Crump, and thank you for your service. If you'd like to learn more about Matt, go to the show notes, and you can view the video, I Choose Life, Not Cancer. Thank you to those who support the show. Your contributions help with the production cost. And I'd like to thank you, the listener, for listening. With that, until next time, lead on.